Hello, my name is Austin Wheeler, and today I will be covering CRISPR, the genome editing tool, as a disruptive technology. A little bit about CRISPR, or genome editing tools, I should say. Beginning in the 60s and 70s, scientists started to combine DNA from different plants and animals in ways that didn't exist in nature. They early on used tools such as talons and zinc finger, which basically could take spacer DNA that someone found, which is little DNA strands between strands of bacteria, and they could use that to inject it into other plants that didn't have the mugshot or the memory that the spacer DNA had, to fight off viruses that it had seen before. So you take plant A that fought off virus A, go to plant B's, never seen virus A, you give it the space DNA from plant A. Now plant B can um, fix itself from the virus A. However, this was not very effective as it was an early on technology and they couldn't always, almost 10% of the time, they could get the spacer DNA to where they wanted to go. So it was very costly. It cost about $5,000 originally to inject it. Now this with the CRISPR-Cas9, it costs about $75. I had no any idea about anything in relation to CRISPR prior to listening to a podcast on the Joe Rogan Experience. While on episode number 938, I think, with Lawrence Krauss, Joe began to talk about this gene editing tool called CRISPR-Cas9 that he heard about on a Radiolab podcast. I then went down this huge rabbit hole of podcast listening and listened to the Radiolab podcast Antibodies Part 1, and they also just did a follow-up episode 2 years later, which was released or aired February of 2017, that had details about genetic trials and things they had done with crops and mice. And it also talked about gene driving. This whole CRISPR technology kind of gets me a little nervous just because watching movies like Gattaca, where you had classes of humans who were treated differently because they weren't genetically modified at birth to be more beautiful or more smart or stronger, seeing how this technology could be used has potential to go somewhere like that if it gets in the wrong hands. So hopefully that doesn't happen. Although there is some cool things that could come out of it, like bringing back extinct animals, as long as we know what the DNA sequence was. We can inject certain DNA sequences into chickens, for example, to kind of get replicas of what dinosaurs could have looked like. And this always excites me because I love the movie Jurassic Park. And there's a very good quote from Ian Malcolm or Jeff Goldblum in that movie, about scientists using technology. They don't necessarily think about long term. And his quote was, "Your scientists were so preoccupied with whether they could, they didn't stop to think if they should." And I think that completely applies to what CRISPR is. CRISPR stands for clustered, regularly interspaced, short palindromic repeats. Basically, what it does is they use RNA, which can read genetic information in DNA, and this guide RNA herds Cas9 to a precise spot on the DNA where a cut is called for. Cas9 then locks onto the double-stranded DNA and unzips it. Cas9 then cuts the DNA, which creates a blank or break in both strands. This causes the cell to sense there is a break and repairs it. So you can basically cut out genetic disease or whatever you want to, or you can cut something out and replace it with whatever you want, which is extremely dangerous, although it is exciting because we can cure diseases we can never cure before. This is disrupting every market from the medical field to crop industries. For example, DuPont in 2020 plans to release a corn that is drought resistant, completely drought resistant. It can grow in the driest environments on Earth. They're also talking about fixing muscular dystrophy in mice. With this comes huge ethical and moral questions. It comes with all kinds of heavy outcomes, and whoever is in control of this technology can really change the way humanity evolves and where we go as a species. Um, so wherever it lands, I hope they have good intentions and we don't end up somewhere like the movie Gattaca. And if you haven't watched Gattaca, I highly recommend it. It's a great movie. Thank you.